Welcome to Module 2, Video 3 of ABEJAS. Feeding honeybees can be crucial for their health and productivity, especially when nectar or pollen sources are scarce. This video will explain ways to recognize if your bees need supplemental feeding during different times of the year. The amount of supplemental food needed by a colony depends on the natural nectar and pollen flow, amount of food stored in the hive, time of year, and the number of bees in a colony. During spring, sugar syrup and pollen supplementation can help when there aren't enough flowers blooming nearby. It can also help boost the growth of a colony coming out of winter, and sugar syrup helps the bees draw out beeswax comb. When flowers finish blooming and nectar and pollen sources become scarce, we refer to this period as a dearth. Providing supplemental food helps maintain critical colony functions, such as brood production. A colony that has limited pollen, nectar, or honey stores may not raise enough brood to keep the colony healthy and growing. In extreme cases, colonies will cannibalize existing brood or starve to death. You can check to see how well the colony's brood is being fed. In a well-nourished colony, the young larvae should rest in a large pool of brood food. The C-shaped larvae have sufficient brood food, which is the milky white liquid in the bottom of the cell. This image is an example of starved, dry larvae with no visible brood food. This signals that the larvae are starving and the colony needs supplemental food. During the late spring or early summer, the bees will likely experience a nectar flow where they bring in large amounts of nectar and make honey. This is a time of year to put honey supers on the hive to provide more room for their honey stores. Stop feeding sugar syrup when the nectar flow begins and the bees have enough food stored. Monitor colonies in late summer and early fall to determine if supplemental feeding is needed. Fall feeding helps build strong colonies for winter and prevent starvation. Feeding is particularly important if the colony feels light and there are not enough honey stores. During this part of the year, a syrup with a higher sugar content helps bees quickly ripen the syrup for storage. To check if a colony is light on honey stores, use the box handle to tip the hive and judge its weight. A hive that is relatively hard to tip is heavy. A hive that readily tips without much effort is light. This can take some practice to correctly judge. Tip the hive before prying any boxes apart to avoid causing a box to slip. Lifting several hives can increase your confidence in the average hive weight in the bee yard. When feeding sugar syrup, there are a few considerations to keep in mind. A small colony will need less food than a large colony with lots of mouths to feed. Avoid feeding colonies that are too weak to survive winter, because that may support robbing by neighboring colonies. If any food is left over from a previous visit, look closely to determine the cause. Make sure any leftover sugar syrup does not smell fermented. Also check the syrup's consistency to confirm it isn't rainwater from a leaky cover. Discard fermented sugar or water away from the hive before refilling the feeder. Bees readily perform a behavior called robbing when there are limited nectar sources and temperatures are warm enough for foraging flights. Robbing bees attack weaker colonies, which can lead to colony death. To identify robbing, look for bees fighting at a hive entrance and for bees trying to enter a hive in a location other than the entrance. Take steps to avoid robbing behavior. Don't leave sugar syrup where bees from other colonies can access it, or spill sugar syrup on or around the hive. Clean up spilled sugar syrup with water. Ensure colonies are well sealed and covers are correctly placed to limit places robbing bees can enter a colony. A colony that runs out of sugar reserves will starve. Starvation typically happens towards the end of winter, beginning of spring, or any time there is a nectar dearth. To tell if a colony starved, look for clusters of dead bees with no stored food in the hive. Dead bees can be found down inside of the cells. These bees died trying to get any last drops of honey. Pollen is rich in protein and amino acids. Protein stimulates brood production. Feed pollen to colonies when there are few blooming flowers and little stored pollen in a hive. To know if a colony is light on pollen stores, look for pollen in cells just outside of a brood nest. A colony with good stores will have bands of pollen surrounding the brood nest. Feed pollen substitute, often called pollen patties, to a colony that lacks stored pollen. Pollen patties may contain ingredients like soy flour, brewer's yeast, a protein source like dried milk or chickpea flour, sugar syrup, or oil that makes the patty pliable, and other additives. A few commercially available pollen substitutes include real pollen. Like with feeding sugar syrup, there are a few considerations to keep in mind when feeding pollen substitute. First is to place the pollen patty onto the frames in the center of the brood chamber for optimal consumption. For larger colonies, feed 1 to 2 pounds of pollen supplement at a time. For weaker colonies, feed half or 1 pound of pollen. Check the bees again in 7 to 10 days. If there is leftover pollen patty in one colony when the others are consuming theirs, look for a problem with the queen. Bees not consuming their pollen patty may not be actively rearing brood. If you observe any small larvae in the pollen, they are likely small hive beetle larvae. We will talk more about that pest in the next module. Discard the patty if it is at all infested with larvae. To reduce small hive beetle issues, provide less pollen supplement, and rip the patty in half for smaller colonies. During late fall and early winter, the colony naturally slows down and the queen stops egg laying. It is not necessary to supplement colonies with pollen at this time because they don't need the extra protein for brood production. As beekeepers, we have the responsibility to feed our bees as needed, to prevent starvation, step in to help honeybee colonies, and know what and when to feed. Combining the knowledge you've learned from Module 1, Honeybee Biology and Overwintering Behavior, you can prepare your colonies to successfully get through any dearths and survive the winter. Next, we will be talking more about how to recognize a colony's queen status. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment below to let us know what additional topics you would like us to cover in future videos.